record on this computer. There we go. Perfect. So we're recording now. So all that the recording can see, by the way, is my screen and what I'm saying, and then my weird mouse moving around because I'm trying to move the chat window over. But this is the PVD 48-hour film project info session. It's an overview of the rules, the events, some of the key highlights. There are a lot of rules for the 48, and this is the things that when I work with teams seems to be the pitfalls and where they get stuck around. And so I want examples of what that means and how to do it properly. So, what's the most important filmmaking skill for the 48 that the 48 teaches you? And this is a really important thing because people think it's a lot of things. What can the 48 teach you? Why are you doing it? What are you learning from it? So I'll give you about 30 seconds to put the answers in the chat. Mostly I just find this a really interesting question because when I talk to people in the real world, they have different answers about like what is the importance of the 48 and what are they taking away from it. So I see some answers have come in and I will take a second because our moderator, by the way, I think I said this briefly, but our moderator was not available tonight. So I'm going to review them and answer some of these, but it was a question just to generate answers and interesting data. So I'm going to move beyond this slide, but I'm not in this presentation going to bring them up because I don't want you to be on blast, quote unquote, inside the presentation. But it's actually, or it is, rules, paperwork, preparing, and practice. There's a lot of other filmmaking skills you can learn about storytelling, about the way to structure narratives, but the 48 is really good at the fundamentals of filmmaking. And the rules in the first set of rules you encounter are very basic. Oh, we got a new person. Yay. So we're talking about the 48. We're talking about the rules. I'm backpedaling a little bit for our new person in the chat. Again, our moderator had to step out tonight. So the person presenting is also your moderator. Welcome. I'm Mel Rainsberger. And I'm going over the rules and fundamentals of the 48-hour film project. At the end of this presentation, there'll be a time to ask questions. I asked some simple questions that are in the chat. Feel free to put your questions in the chat now in general, and we'll get to them. But I'm going to go through this presentation, and then there'll be a more back and forth session. And when the back and forth session happens, I'll turn off the recording so that you are not a part of the recorded session, because I don't want individual wonderful creators to be a part of this. But I do want creators that can't be a part of tonight to be able to see this. So the competition weekend for the Providence 48-hour film project is June 23rd through 25th. That is when you make the film. You start at 7 p.m. on Friday, June 23rd. And by start at 7 p.m., I should have put in this, by the way, and that was a little bit of my fault. But you will show up at 6 p.m. to kick off. Kickoff is not a determined location right now, so we're working on that. But in general, your filmmaking starts at 7. And your film is due by 7:30 p.m. on Sunday the 25th. These are two conflicting rules, I just realized. But you want to plan on being done by 7 p.m. There's a little wiggle room that you can sort of be done by 7:30. Only works that meet these deadlines will officially be a part of the competition. All films received on Sunday will be screened. So keep that in mind when you're participating in these things that, we got to my back. Keep in mind that being late doesn't mean you don't get screened. And that's a really great thing because we're screened at the Avon this year, and the Avon is like an amazing cinema. So don't think that not being on time means you can't screen. The only thing it means is you can't go for like best film. And you can still get an audience award. One of our films last year was late and didn't meet certain requirements, but it's still screened and it still won an audience award. Oh, did it not? Does not? There we are. So again, this is an overview of the rules that people have problems with. There are a lot of rules, and they are in 2 different sections of the 48-hour website. We are not going to cover all 44 rules. That is the sole responsibility of the filmmakers, of the team leaders. What I'm doing is going over the sticky areas because there are so many rules that this would take a whole day to go through. So if you're looking for what those 2 links are, it's these 2 right now. It's the filmmaking rules and the legal rules. And they are, there we go. They are a lot. Like, I think the first set is like 24 rules, and then the other one is then like 20 rules. I know this is A through X rules, and then this must be 1 through 20, but they're a lot. So I really encourage people to look at those rules, study them, understand them. And then if they still don't make sense, that's when you email me, because that's what I'm here to help you with, really and truly, is how to understand these rules and what they mean. Why is this not clicking over to the next slide? There we go. So the first thing is you must have a representative at the official kickoff of the 48-hour film project as listed on your city's web page. Right now, we don't have a location for that kickoff. It's April. We will have one by June, but we don't have that location set right now. It will be listed on the webpage. I'll email you about it. But if you can't be at kickoff, you have to contact me to have someone else draw your genre. I can't do it because I'm like a biased person that runs the whole thing. So I can't do it. But in general, somebody else can draw your genre for you. That can be a friend, that can be a teammate, or it can be one of the other team leaders. But that's an easily solved thing. But the kickoff happens in a real place, and you draw your genre. When you go to kickoff, you already have to have your team leader agreement signed. You can do that online, or you can bring it in person, but it has to be done. And in that, you will pull 2 genres. In that, you must pick one. So if you get horror and musical, you have to pick one. If you want to make a horror musical, fine. But you have to at least try to do one of them. You literally don't have to do both, nor does it earn you any points to do both. It's just that they're trying to give you 2 options because that's the way the rules work. So pick one, do one. Doing 2 is great, but not necessary. By the way, if you're following along, in this presentation, I'm also including the rules as they are numbered or lettered and their URL. So this is rule E in this link down here. Required elements. So you have to include 3 things in your film besides the genre. And this is the way that this competition keeps you honest. You have to include a required character. The character must be seen on screen, and it must be clear either directly or through context who the required character is. So if it's John, the mayor of Cincinnati, it must be clear that he's John. It doesn't mean that somebody has to say, here's John, the mayor of Cincinnati. But he might go, hi, I'm the mayor of Cincinnati. Or somebody might say, hey, have you met my friend John? And he goes, hey there. And he's like, I'm the mayor of my town. But it has to be clear through context who this is. But he must be shown on screen, and it must be clear who he is. Somebody can't reference the character, and you don't show it. So it can't be like, my friend, the mayor of Cincinnati, and then he's never shown. It has to be shown on screen. And in general, the way the 48-hour deals with the character, they always give you 2 gendered names. So if it was like John, be John and Joan. They will give you options so that you're not just working with like, I have to have this be a male character, I have to have this be a female character. And if you're unsure if this meets the requirements in the weekend, let me know. I can absolutely answer how to do that. The required prop must also be seen on screen. A picture of the required prop is also allowed. So last year, again, we don't know what 2023 is, but last year the prop was a basket. So it could be a basket in scene. It could be a basket somebody was carrying. It could be a basket in a photograph somebody showed somebody else, but it had to be shown on the screen somehow. We actually had a team that didn't have the required prop, and it was a basket, and that's pretty easy. But they didn't meet that requirement, and they got disqualified. So make sure that that prop is seen on screen. And the third thing you have to include is a required line of dialogue. The line of dialogue is always something short, simple, and it tricks up a lot of teams. About a third of our teams last year were disqualified because of the line. You have to say it verbatim, meaning in a row. So if the line is, hey, dude, you can't be like, dude, hey. It has to be hey and then dude. That's the line. It can be spoken, sung, or written. So you could have a character say, hola, hombre, and then subtitle, hey, dude. Or if you're reading the other way on the screen, hey, dude. But it has to be clear that's the line of dialogue, and it has to be written if it's in another language or a silent film or something like that. So again, it's either translated and then it's subtitled or it's spoken. You could even have two characters do the line, but it has to be tied together. And so you could have two characters meet each other. It could be like, hey, dude. And that's fine if there's no dividing piece of dialogue in the middle. So it can be like, hey, John, dude. It has to be hey and dude together. I know it's a little tricky, but you can play around with it if you understand that rule. But it does have to be said in those words in that order. All footage must be shot within the official time period of the project, meaning you have to shoot your film in 48 hours. That's the challenge. There's some caveats around that, and I will go into those. And that's partially why I'm doing this presentation, to explain these rules. So animation and special effects are permitted, but must be created during the official time period. Still photographs are also permitted, provided the team has the rights to them. The photos do not need to be created during the official time period. However, the stills created outside of the time period may not be used in sequence to create the illusion of motion. So you can't do like a stop motioning thing with people, is essentially what they're trying to say in this rule. But you can use stock photos. You want to pretend one of your characters is in Hawaii and you film them against a green screen and you use a photo of Hawaii that you bought from iStock Photo. That's fine. That is actually completely fine. We're not requiring people to go to Hawaii to simulate Hawaii. But what you need to do is a few other rules. But still photographs are permitted, but you can't sequence them in a row that makes movement. And mostly in general, they want you to make all images in the time period. Footage continued, because this is a really complicated question. Remade sequences are compositions that are available to all people via purchase and download are permitted if the majority of the frames contain content created within the official time period. So this is a little confusing of a concept, but you can a lot of times nowadays buy like graphics packages and effects packages, and those are permitted as long as you're changing the package. Pre-made portions of sequences may not include people or other performers though. And so my example, if you don't understand this, is things like on Video Hive and Adobe Stock. So you can include things that were made that you bought online as long as they don't include people, and then much of it was changed by you. So again, going back to the Hawaii example, if you used footage of Hawaii and not a photo of Hawaii, it's okay. As long as you're like putting somebody that you brought into your crew in front of it against a green screen and you're compositing the two together. That is 100% fine. Or if you're like using a graphics package from Video Hive, but you're changing the text and you're changing the colors, also fine. But a lot of it has to be manipulated within the time period. No stock footage or footage shot or created at any other time may be used unless the footage is part of a post-production effect or on a background monitor. So again, going back to that green screen example, it's on a TV, it's behind an actor, it's something, but you can't just like cut away to a bunch of stock footage. Because if you could just use stock footage or stock images, it means that people could like assemble their whole 48-hour film project ahead of the 48-hour film. So it has to be placed over or under footage. So over meaning like you do a newscast and somebody's got the little bubble at the top of the screen. That's like over, but it's part of the footage you're making in that moment. And then other stock footage that is allowable is like bullets, fires, explosions, etc. So like if you're using a fire effect in your footage that you've bought, so by the way, let's say Video Copilot's great for this. They have so many stock effects. They're not free, but they have gold standard stock effects of fire, smoke, bullets, explosions, glass breaking, etc. So that's what they mean by allowable stock footage. That is like bullets, fires, explosions, or those things. All of those are permissible, but again, it's the mixing of these elements. The key thing is that it's okay to use stock photos, stock images, as long as you mix them with the footage you have and you shot in that weekend. You can't cut away to something else. Oh, we still got footage. Footage is the biggest question I get, by the way. Footage is like the number one like thing that trips up team. And all that said, it's permissible to use these things, and at the same time, you have to have a materials release form demonstrating you have the rights to these things. And I'll go into that towards the end of this, but just keep that in the back of your mind. It's okay to use these things, but there's paperwork. A lot of the 48, as I said at the beginning, is paperwork. This is the next set of requirements. This was specifically highlighted to me through a team, I think in another city, that some teams pay for people, and that's not okay. Your cast and crew must be volunteers. You can pay people in food, t-shirts, good vibes, donuts, coffee, but you can't go and buy a videographer. You can't go buy an editor. You can't pay people hourly rates. It's a volunteer-based system. So keep that in mind. You can't pay for the experts. And if you do, you'll be disqualified. More eligibility requirements. Sorry, I just got a notification on my phone. Just making sure this is not an important thing. I don't think this is. Sorry for that. But I wanted to make sure that there was no problems with somebody getting into the chat. So the eligibility on a very broad level is that it must be the original work of the entrant. You cannot infringe on any third party's rights. I can go into examples if you want, but I don't think that's going to be a huge importance. It must be suitable for publication. I.e. may not be obscene or indecent, must not contain obscene or pornographic material. And by the way, that is a very broadly defined term, and I understand that. And the way I am told as a city producer to interpret that is to interpret it. So it's my interpretation of those things. But in general, I'll say keep it PG-13. PG-13 is a very okay level to be at. It doesn't mean you have to be super kid-friendly, but it means like, don't make Pink Flamingos by John Waters. It cannot contain any defamatory statements about any person, company, organization, or entity. And this is a very specifically Providence thing, because we actually had a team that made derogatory statements about the Providence 48. And they got disqualified for that, because it turns out you can't say bad things about the people showing your film. You cannot invade the privacy or other rights of any person, company, or entity. May not in any way violate applicable laws and regulations. Basically, the 48 works under the blanket of any country it's in. So you can't go film a bunch of strangers and put them in your film. That invades those strangers' privacy. Don't do it. Cannot contain any copyrighted elements. You cannot put Oprah in your film, even if you filmed her off the TV yourself. Those things that were not made by you are copyrighted unless you purchase them or you explicitly have the rights to say stock photos or stock images, stock video, music. you can't use them. It's a very basic thing so that people don't just like take an episode of HBO and submit it to the 48. Entries containing prohibited or inappropriate content as determined by the 48, meaning myself and HQ, in its sole discretion to be inappropriate will be disqualified. Again, it's up to me to decide these things, and I'm saying keep it a little PG-13. If you want an okay level of PG-13, I'll say 80s PG-13, not 2023 PG-13. 80s PG-13 gives you a lot more room than 2023 PG-13. But in general, PG-13 is a good line. Again, the 48-hour film project reserves the right to make the final determination as to which entries are eligible. The 48-hour reserves the rights to refuse to screen a film or to make an announcement at the screen regarding the content of the film, meaning specifically if I think there's still something risky about your film, I will probably still show it, but I might put a warning in front of it. Last year, our third place film had some drug use in a very lighthearted manner, and I still warned people, but I still screened it and it was still eligible for awards. So it doesn't disqualify you from awards. It just means like be careful and know that you might have a warning. And if you want everyone to be able to see it, keep it pretty light, breezy, easy, wonderful. This is the fun parts. This is the part that's really hard to conceptualize. So I made this like nice little graph. So runtime and credits. The rules are basic and complex, but the most important thing is it must be a minimum of 4 minutes, a maximum of 7. So 4 to 7 minutes. I will always tell people, write a 4-minute script because you'll overfilm. But don't write a 7-minute script because it's very hard to pare it down. That's the basic rule, 4 to 7 minutes. And that's rule L and M down here. Then we're going to backpedal a little and talk about the totality of the video file you're putting into the system that you upload to, which is it must start with 5 whole seconds of black. If you're using something like Premiere, they allow you to like generate a black slate or a black matte or colored matte. So no, that's like how you get to those terms, but it's 5 seconds of black, however you achieve that. Then there is a little animated thing that you should include at the beginning of your film that can be downloaded from here. It's a nice little countdown, but it's an animated thing that the 48-hour film project provides to you. It's a video file, so you put it that after your 5 seconds of black. Or you can include a title card that says, this film was made for the 48-hour film project, and the URL. Do you have to do one of those two things? The video file, or you just write the text yourself. Then, and this is something you have to make, you have to have a card that has your team name, the title of the film you made that weekend, the genre you picked out of the hat, your city, so in this case, Providence, and the date of the competition, which would be June 23rd. By the way, all of this stuff you can kind of do ahead of time. These parts, this is what I'm telling you. This you can set up in a video file now. This doesn't have to be done this weekend. Up until, the title of your film and genre, but you can set up this video file for yourself so you're not doing these little things right then and there on late Saturday, early Sunday. Then, oh my goodness, another 2 seconds of black. This is a very standard film formatting thing where they're trying to create breaks for the eye and breaks for the audience to understand content. A lot of this will get edited out in the screening, but it's a requirement of this festival's process that you have to do all these things. And then your 4 to 7 minute film. And this is a question I get a lot. What about opening credits? So opening credits that are not this thing, the team title card, but opening credits count against your total run time. So if you do lavish credits that take 45 seconds, you've taken the 45 seconds out of the 7 minutes. So keep that in mind when you're making this. And it's cool to have lavish credits. I'm not telling people to not do that. I'm just saying, keep in mind what you're trying to work with there. Then at the end, you do get an additional 60 seconds for your film credits. And that 60 seconds is like your entire crew. You know, who directed it, who shot it, who acted in it, who did the music, who did the editing, locations, etc. Thank mom and dad. That's all of that stuff at the end. You get an extra 60 seconds to do all of that. So at max, if minute 1 is here, you get 8 minutes. And I do look really hard at this little gray area here. You can use footage in your end credits, but in general, your whole film has to be done in 7 minutes. But you could do like Pixar-style bloopers in that extra 60 seconds. You can do all sorts of stuff. You can just show like background shots, whatever you want. And then it must also include the word still, this film was made for the 48-hour film project, and then the URL. These are the requirements of this festival. Then, once you submit your film on June 25th, 2023 at 7 p.m., you cannot show it online. You could show a trailer, but you can't show it online. This is a rule of the film festival. You can't screen it in any way prior to the premiere. And the premiere is on July 11th at the Avon Cinema. This includes uploading the video to any website or screening the film for groups of anyone other than the team. And this is, again, why I'm doing this presentation. People get really tripped up. They're like, my actors, you know, they flew in from LA to be in this because they were my buddies from film school and they just wanted to participate. And how am I supposed to show them the film? They can't be at the premiere. I'm not saying you can't show your buddies from LA the film. You can't premiere it online. You can send them like a private link. You can send them, YouTube, Vimeo, Wistia, all these websites. You can create private links. Google Drive is great for that. You can create private links for your team to show them the film that they were in or participated in, but you can't premiere it online. You can't post it to Facebook, Twitter, your public YouTube channel, etc. Because we want people to go to the premiere. We want them to see your film fresh and wonderful. And if you're putting it all over the web before that, it doesn't really help. And also, you're encouraged to make a trailer. We have a lot of time between the filming and the premiere. We have about 15 days. So you, by all means, can make a trailer and blast that trailer everywhere. And I would love for you to do that because it's great advertising for us. And they say the trailer should be no longer than 48 seconds. This is the 48-hour film project. So yeah, just to keep in mind, it doesn't mean you can't show people. And especially if you live locally and your crew lives locally, you can bring people over, you can show them in your house. Just means don't put it online, please, or don't put it like in a public way online. Just keep it on the down low for 2 whole weeks. And then after 2 weeks, you can put it everywhere. Now we're going to talk about the production documents. And this is the other big trippy thing, is there's a lot of documents and it's like, what do the documents mean? We need all these documents before we can screen your film. They're all submitted online. By written or electronic signatures, they mean like, because they're all PDFs, it means that like in general, you can like use a screenshot of your signature or you could like hand sign it and scan it. But all of these documents must be to me by midnight on Sunday to be screened and eligible for awards. In general, I'd really like them all at 7 p.m. But they allow till midnight, so I'm allowing you till midnight. Just the team leader agreement, the wrap-up form, the team roster, certification statement, waiver and release forms, music release forms, material release forms, location release forms. And we're going to go through each of these. Some are easy, some are hard. Team leader, very easy. Team leader, films at the team leader form. You can do it online, but it's due to me by kickoff. If you don't have it by kickoff, I will know, and I will have a piece of paper for you to sign right there. But it has to happen, or you don't pull a genre. It's a 3-page document. It's a lot of words, but it's good words, and it's easy to sign. And this is what I mean by the 48 is very good, because it teaches you about paperwork. Good filmmaking is about insurance and liability and waivers and permission and contracts. And the 48 does that level very, very, very well. So keep in mind, if you're running a bigger film set, a short film you're producing, go look at the 48 documents and say, like, how can I use these in my everyday filmmaking? The other one is the wrap-up form. I don't have an example because it's on the online system, cinema48.com. It is very easy. The wrap-up form in general is more like a, what did you think about the 48 kind of thing? It's like, what was your team? What was your genre? What were your feelings around it? But it's a very breezy form. So if you're thinking this is the hard one, it's not. But you can only fill it out pretty much on Sunday when everything's done. Which again is why they allow you till midnight, because it's not very hard. The team roster. Who was on your team? By the way, this is my number one document. So people submit the team roster, and I use the team roster against every other piece of paperwork that I'm given. So the team roster is a very, very, very important document for me. And it's who acted in it, who edited it, who directed it, who shot it, who did the music, who did voiceover, who did locations, etc. But that team roster is really important. That all happens on cinema48.com. The certification statement is another, I will say, breezy document. You're seeing an example of it. It certifies that you're submitting the film that you're submitting. I, named team leader for the Providence 48-hour film project, a team... four means your team. So for your team name, a team participating in the Providence 48-hour film project hereby certify that all creative work for our film name, including all writing, shooting, editing, occurred during the official time, 48-hour time period beginning Friday, 7 p.m. local time, ending by 7:30 p.m. local time. You sign it, you print your name, you put the date. It's a very, very easy form. This is the form that comes along with this form, the team roster. So waiver and release is all the people that worked on your film, cast and crew. So again, editor and actor. It's a one-page form. I'm going to say this a couple times. Your cast and crew can fill this out ahead of time. You do not have to start doing this at 7 p.m. on Friday. If you know who's going to be in your film and who's going to help on the film, you could get these forms done ahead of time. And that will really save you a lot of time. Oh, my cat just moved my screen. This will save you a lot of time when you're working on the... Kitty, don't do that. This will save you a lot of time when you're shooting your film if you don't have to worry about this kind of paperwork. This is the sticky parts that people ask me a lot of questions about, is music and material release forms. So the music release form, a lot of people don't use local musicians, and there's no judgment around that, but I do encourage from a personal level for people to use local musicians. Go to bars, go to band shows, go to live performances and say, hey, do you want to do this? But if you don't want to do that, if you're not comfortable with doing that, you can use stock music and you can use royalty-free or Creative Commons music, but it has to have a form. And that form, to make it easy for me, should include a receipt or the license. Meaning, if you bought it, it should include the receipt. If it's like Creative Commons or it was free to use and free to download, any site that's offering music or materials for free will include the usage license. You can use this for X and not X. A lot of times those sorts of licenses say you can use it for creative work, but not commercial. But I need an example of what that is. I hear so much, I got this for free from a website, it's fine. I don't know it's fine. I don't know that from hearing the music in the film. I need this. I need this paperwork. I need to know where you got it from. I need to know that the place you got it from says it's fine to use. That's the 3 levels. What did you use? Where did it come from? Does where it came from say, hey, you can use this? For example, I use Pond 5 a lot in my regular day-to-day job. And Pond 5 has a very simple system where they have all sorts of things you can download, like a receipt, proof of purchase, credit attribution if that's required, a license, like, so say you were a giant movie, you could buy different kinds of licenses. Like if you were like Thor 2, you could buy a different kind of license and it would license you to put your film in Thor 2. So I'm just showing you sort of like what that means when you're in these systems. If you're downloading the receipt, that usually the receipt will be an easy to download thing because a lot of these sites know that you're working this way. If you don't have a receipt, a lot of times a site will have like a license page that explains like how you can use these things. So I used an example from freesound.org. And this is an example of their license page and what's allowed to be used and how it's allowed to be used. So they have like 3 different levels of usage, which is Creative Commons, or you can use it for free, but you have to attribute people, or you have to attribute people, but it can't be commercial. And they explain this all on their website. And they explain if you have to attribute it to the creator, how to do that. And you should absolutely do this in your film, but that doesn't negate this music release form. And I hear that a lot. Well, he attributed it to the artist. And that is such good practice. Artists live by being attributed, by being shown that they did these kinds of works. But you still need this music release form. You can't get around this thing. Even though you might have other requirements from the site you got it from. So if you're filling out your music release form, what you want to do is you want to say, I got this from freesound.org. Obviously, the person from freesound.org can't fill out your paperwork that weekend. There's some stranger that uploaded their stock to a site. But what you can do is, again, include the receipt or the license so that I understand where these things came from. You should include the file name. So again, if I needed to track this down and prove that you're allowed to use this music, I know the URL, I know the file name, I can go look at the license independently and go, oh yeah, they did use it the right way. But I need to know those things because hearing it or even just seeing an attribution on screen doesn't mean anything to me without this form. I know it's a lot, but in general, tell me stuff. Unsurprisingly, materials release forms work much the same way. Material release forms generally mean things that aren't music, but aren't like you don't need a materials release form for every prop you use. Let's be clear on that. That would be an unfathomable amount of paperwork. You don't need like every coffee cup to have a piece of paperwork. But if you use stock music or stock images or stock video, that needs a form. Even if you got it for free or it was donated or you paid for it, it needs a form. And it works the same way music works. Here's the form. You attribute it. So either you use a receipt or you find the license page and you give me a copy of the license page and you tell me the URL and you tell me the file name, that I know where you got this and what it can be used for. So if I needed to check up on stuff, I could check up on it. But it's materials mostly means stock images and stock video. It doesn't mean every single material in your film, because then you truly could not finish this paperwork by midnight. So license, photo. This came from Unsplash. Unsplash, by the way, it's a great stock site that gives you photos for free, as long as you attribute them properly and use them properly. So I really like Unsplash a lot. Pixabay is another good one. The other like biggest area I see people get tripped up on. So it's music, materials, and then locations. All locations you use need a release form. It can be your bestest bud. It can be your twin from the womb. If you shot somewhere in the real world, you need a location release form. It needs to be filled out. It can be your house. It needs a location release form. If I see a place in the film that doesn't have a form, you get disqualified. Last year, we had a film that filmed in a cemetery. And I said, you don't have a form for that. And they said, we always film there. That is not permissible That's not the way the rules work. I always use this place is not the way the rules work. The rules say you need a form for every location. So even if a place is free to film in, like a park, I need proof from the park's website or the park manager or the parks department that you're allowed to film there. So that might take some extra work ahead of time, but you can also do that work ahead of time. That's allowed in the rules. You can set up your locations ahead of time. You can get permission from restaurants, parks, beaches, whatever you want. You can get all of that set up ahead of time so that weekend all you're focused on is filming. But every single location you show on film needs this form. And they need to be signed by the owner, or like if it's a park, it's the parks department or the park manager. I've heard a lot, by the way, but it's my buddy's house, and I don't care if it's your buddy's house. I still need the form. Your buddy can sign a form. So in general, assume everything needs paperwork. Don't assume I know that you can film somewhere. Don't assume that I knew where you got that music. Don't assume that I know it came from a royalty-free site. If in doubt, make a piece of paperwork about it. Be overly prescriptive and descriptive on where it came from and that you are very, very sure you're allowed to use it. Because paperwork is something that goes, for instance, a little bit of the hiccups. For instance, if you go to nationals, if you go to international and you're going for best film in the whole world, they're going to look at this paperwork very finely. And you do not want to get disqualified because you filmed somewhere you weren't allowed to film, or it seems you filmed somewhere you weren't allowed to film, or it seems like you didn't purchase the music in your film or got it from a royalty-free site or a Creative Commons site. You want to really get that stuff honed in because that's the stuff that prevents you from like the full level of success you can get to. So just get it right. And a lot of this you can do ahead of time. One of the things I used to do as an aside is I would go to local bands and say, hey, can I use your music for my 48-hour film project? And they say, yeah. And I'm like, give me an MP3, fill out this form. I didn't use every song in my film, but I had the rights to do it. And at the end of the day, what I would do is I would turn in the paperwork for the music I had used, which it made my films better because the music was interesting and amazing and specific and local and funky. But I didn't have to use every song, but I could get 20 tracks all lined up that were a bucket of interesting songs to use. And, you know, the musicians knew that, you know, it was only for this film. I wasn't going to sell the film. I wasn't going to like exploit them in some way. It was just for this one little local filmmaking project. And I got a lot of really good music that way, and it was great. So again, things you can do ahead of time. Organize your crew, organize your cast, secure your equipment. If you know you're renting stuff or you know you're going to borrow from somebody, get that all set up ahead of time. Scout and secure locations and do your paperwork. I think you can do 90% of your paperwork ahead of time. I just think that's a very possible level to hit, knowing that like a lot of it is just who's going to be in your film and what locations you're going to use. You can do that ahead of time. Those would have to be unknowns. So that weekend, you're focused on filming a film, not doing paperwork. Because like, going back to my dumb Thor 2 example, Thor 2 was not doing the paperwork like Chris Hemsworth's paperwork while he's in the Thor costume. That all happened way ahead of time. So when he shows up on set, he's Thor. He's not Chris Hemsworth doing paperwork in the Thor costume. Some extra tips, I would say get a dedicated editor. I think that's what helped me when I used to run a film a lot or run a 48-hour team a lot. If you could have somebody that's shooting and directing and then a different person that's editing at the same time, it's really useful, meaning that like every 2 to 3 hours, you pull tapes from your camera, send them back to an editor. The editor is editing while you're filming. Your film will be tighter. The more time you give to editing, the better the film. Write a lean script. Don't write a 7-minute script. Write a 4-minute script and then plan to have fun and flourishes. But if you make a 7-minute script, it's probably too long and you're going to end up going overtime. As I said before, get your cast and crew to fill out all their forms. Test any new equipment you're using and clean up your hard drive space. I once filmed with my iPhone when I used to run a team, and I did not clean my iPhone ahead of time, and we basically filled it up every 45 minutes. And that slows down things if you're trying to dump drives and move things around. Make sure you have a good clean, I would say 100 to 500 gigabytes. 100 gigabytes is probably the minimum. You've heard me say this already. Get your location paperwork done. That's absolutely something that can happen now ahead of time. And the earlier you start, the more interesting locations you can have. If you're looking at restaurants, bars, coffee shops, cafes, etc., talk to them. A lot of times they're very busy in the morning and very busy in the evening, but they would love free press in the middle of, if they're filming in the middle of the day, they would love to be featured, but don't plan to film at their busiest hours. And in addition, if you see a restaurant in your area that's still getting set up, that's not quite open yet, try to contact the owner and talk to them, because new restaurants that aren't open yet would love that free press, would love being featured. So that when your film releases, it probably coincides with the restaurant opening. And it now looks like they're already the cool spot in the neighborhood. So places yet to open are a really good thing, but talk to them, get the permission from the owner, find out when you can film there. Also, get snacks, water, a first aid kit, sunscreen, bug spray, and any other filmmaking supplies ahead of time. I think I have a good kit every year when I used to do the 48, and I still would miss things. One year I missed bug spray. I had tons of sunscreen, missed bug spray. Everybody hated that year. So that's why I put that in the list. And then number 7 is just have fun. At the end of the day, the goal should be to learn things and have fun. And if you are stressed out or overtired or overworked or worried about winning or it being perfect or right or correct or good, or that like somebody is doing the wrong thing, don't worry about it. Have fun, because the 48 hours is going to end and you're going to have a film. It's just going to happen. But at the end of the day, at the end of the weekend, if you have a film and you have had a fight with all your friends, that is a bad thing to do. You just want to have fun and make a film, not have a fight and make a film. I should make that into a t-shirt. So extra knowledge, we have, what is this? 6 events left. 3 are all ages events at Retina Creative Labs. These are all ages meetups, meaning they are for everyone. Some of our events have been in bars, and it was requested we don't do that as much. So we have some that are in an all ages location. Retina Creative Labs is a really great sponsor. They have great parking. They are a filming studio with a white cyclorama and studio lights and all this really cool stuff there. So they're just a great local resource. So I'm really happy to highlight them and show them off. But it's also a great space that everybody can come to. So those are usually on the weekend. So one of them coming up is Sunday, April 30th, Saturday, May 6th, Saturday, June 10th. And then we have an event in May at New Harvest Roasters. New Harvest Roasters is a coffee shop / bar on the west side of Providence. They're very cool. They're very chill. They also have a lot of outdoor spaces, which is one of the reasons I chose them, especially as going to the warmer months. And then Isco Spirits, which is a bar. I will just disclose that they are an alcoholic establishment. They're also on the west side, but they're also outside. They're also very close to a few restaurants. So if you just want to pick up a soda and some tacos or a pizza, you can do that and bring that over to Isco. So Isco's a really other good place. And then we have this cool event I'm announcing here, which is the PVD 48-hour film retrospective. So we got a grant from the 195 district to do an outdoor screening of old 48-hour films on Friday, June 9th. That's going to be outside. It's 100% free for everybody. It's going to be near the pedestrian bridge downtown. You can sit out on the lawn, watch your film, hang out with people, and then we're going to do a Q&A after that with the filmmakers we screen. So I know there are very few people in this chat, but if you've got a film from a previous 48, send it to me because we can possibly screen it. And then you got a little extra press and notoriety and stuff. But it's very cool that we get to do this extra event over by the pedestrian bridge because it's a very cool area. And then we have question time. So tomorrow I'm going to release this video online. So this is pretty much where I'm going to stop because I don't want anybody to feel like their questions are like public. So I'm going to say thank you. And I hope this video was really helpful for people and that they got a lot of knowledge out of this and understand a little bit more how to apply to the rules and stay in line with the 48-hour, and that they now don't feel so pressured by all the rules because there's 44 of them, and they just go and have fun and make a weird film. So I'm going to stop the share, and then I'm going to go to Q&A. Stop share. I don't know how to stop the recording.